Hello, my name is Isaac Bartz, Outbound Product Manager for ServiceNow, and today's video is going to be going over how to get started with DevOps Change Velocity. As a brief overview, we want to remind you of what the DevOps solution is. ServiceNow is not taking over any of the tools in your existing DevOps toolchain. In actuality, we are integrating with your existing planning, coding, orchestration tools, and so forth to be able to pull in key metrics, key events, and key commits that are happening from your developers. Our goal, once we have these integrations created, is to make it as easy as possible for your development teams to put their data into the ServiceNow platform and the ServiceNow's common service data model, and that will allow you to make decisions and provide analytics, such as how is your development team performing? How is your IT team supporting them? Automate change requests, have a better auditing and compliance trail, and overall improved visibility to the key metrics of the most important software applications and projects your company makes. With that said, let's get started. To start things off, make sure that you're on a San Diego instance of ServiceNow or later. You'll also need to install DevOps Change Velocity version 1.35.4 or later, and we'll show that next. As an example, we're bringing up 4 of our most commonly used CI/CD tools: Jira, GitHub, Jenkins, and ADO. This is not an all-inclusive list, it's just 4 examples, but this should give you an idea of the type of information you'll need to gather to complete the integrations. For example, Jira, you'll need the URL to your Jira instance, and then the Jira account username and API token that ServiceNow will be utilizing. GitHub, very similar setup, and Jenkins and ADO have a few changes as well. Keep in mind, along the bottom you'll see optional ServiceNow mid-server. So if you have an on-premise version of, let's say, Jenkins, you will need a ServiceNow mid-server to handle communication at that point. Most of these integrations are cloud-based, so a lot of times that mid-server is not necessary at all. To get started, you'll need a subscription to ITSM Pro. All ServiceNow ITSM Pro customers receive DevOps Change Velocity and DevOps Config. To activate DevOps Change Velocity, you have a few options. Going to the ServiceNow store is one way to check your entitlement and verify that DevOps Change Velocity is available to you. You will receive the data model, all integrations required to run DevOps, and the reporting, which is called DevOps Insight. Clicking your products will see if you have a valid subscription and can activate it. Another approach would be to go to your plugins, or newly renamed to applications, in ServiceNow. Checking DevOps brings back the plugins, and you can see here in our list that we do have multiple different DevOps plugins available, but in this case here, we're going to be specifically looking for DevOps Change Velocity. I already have it installed in this particular instance, but this would be the one that you're looking for. Depending on the size of your instance, it can take an hour or 2 to activate that. So make sure that you have time and are activating it beforehand and before you want to get into the configuration. Once the installation has finished, do a quick validation by typing DevOps into your filter navigator. Now you should see all of the new tables that are part of ServiceNow's common service data model. You'll see where your pipelines will be coming in, you'll see your commits, your artifacts, repositories, and so forth. This means you have now successfully installed ServiceNow's Change Velocities plugin. One final bit of housekeeping. This video is not meant to be an all-inclusive video. There is some nuance between each of the tools in your CI/CD toolchain and how to get them connected to ServiceNow. With that said, please make sure you go to docs.servicenow.com, DevOps, DevOps again, and reference this section to connect to third-party tools. Any of the settings for Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, Jenkins that are specific to those tools will be in this documentation. For instance, Azure DevOps requires you to go to the marketplace and search for ServiceNow DevOps and install the plugin on the ADO site itself. This is just an example of a tool-specific requirement that you will have to do for each individual tool. So just again, verify your docs site, look in the documentation for what you have to do on the tool side to complete the setup. Next, we're going to wrap up the one-time setup. These are some platform settings that you'll need to configure for DevOps regardless of what CI/CD tool you'll be using. There's two users that are required to run the ServiceNow DevOps solution. That is the DevOps.system user and the DevOps.integration.user. Let's take a look at these and see what roles these users have. First, the DevOps.system. The required role will be sn_devops.admin. Next, DevOps.integration.user. The required role will be sn_devops.integration. The rest of our setup is going to be done in what's called the DevOps Change Workspace. So at the top of your ServiceNow instance, click on Workspaces, and because we have the proper plugins activated, you should now see the DevOps Change Workspace. This is a guided setup of sorts. You can see here, setting up accounts, assigning roles, tasks, creating applications, connecting tools, and also getting into the change policy itself is all available to us here in the DevOps Change Workspace. Let's begin by setting up the passwords for the accounts. But this is very, very important. For this one step only of setting up accounts, you have to be in what's called the DevOps Data Model scope. Again, please change your scope to DevOps Data Model at this time. The rest of the setup, we'll be doing it in global. Just for the passwords, we need this scope though, okay? So setting up accounts, the username, it's our integration user. And let's set that password. Next, we've got our DevOps system user, and we'll set our password again. I'm going to use the same one that I used for the integration user. At this point, we have the option to create more users and give them whatever role is necessary. At this point, you can choose assign role, pick another ServiceNow user, and select what role they have, whether it's an admin or it's a viewer or a user of some sort. But we have all of the users we need, so I'm going to cancel this and go back to the home page of the DevOps Change Workspace. Let's continue the setup from here. Now that we're done with our passwords, we do want to change the scope back to global, so make sure you do that. And from global, we will continue the rest. So you can assign roles. We've already kind of done that. We have all of the users we need. We don't need to add any more users, but that's where you would do so at that time, or assign DevOps permissions to an existing user of ServiceNow. Assign tasks is very nice, because what you can do here is you can assign a task. In this case, we're going to pick DevOps admin, that's fine. And we want to alert them that they need to connect to another system. We'll pick Connect Azure DevOps, and there is a due date. Okay. So at that point, this is a way that you can use the workspace to create tasks and communicate with individuals who have credentials. If this individual has credentials, GitHub or Azure DevOps, you're alerting them that you need further assistance. But hopefully you already have all the passwords and everything you need. Let's go back to the home screen here. Now that our one-time setup has been completed, we're going to connect to Azure DevOps with the link called Connect a Tool. Notice there's different types of tools. We've got planning tools, coding tools, software quality summary tools. Orchestration is what we're going to use today. So Azure DevOps is really kind of a one-stop shop. It's unique in that sense, where customers using Azure DevOps, that is their planning, coding, and orchestration tool all together. Adding a tool name is where we start, and I'm going to go ahead and click the next button. From here, we need to enter the Azure DevOps instance details. So the instance link itself, and then the personal access token. So you may need an Azure DevOps administrator to give you that token. It has successfully connected. There are permission checks here that were done, and we can see here that we are connected to build, release, your pipelines. So good confirmation message. We can go ahead and continue. Clicking on the connect button will bring us to the next screen, which is asking us who is the individual or username that we're going to be using to send data. And we don't need webhooks, but if you need near real-time fetching of your Azure DevOps commits and pipelines, you can set that up with webhooks. But we're going to skip this because we are okay with the out-of-the-box nightly poll, and that'll be fine for our setup. Now we're going to select the plans to track. So what plans are associated to your application. And in this case here, we have Parts Unlimited YAML 2, and that's where our planning is taking place. So our work items are coming in. What repositories are we going to be tracking? This is a pretty fresh ADO instance, so I only see one repository, and that's all I'm going to select. Now the pipelines. You can select all of them at this point if you want, but we're only going to select one. We're only going to be monitoring that one particular pipeline at this time. And here are the services to pipeline steps. So on the left-hand column, you'll see in gray that the steps are coming in from Azure DevOps. So deploy application, build, testing, and validating. Well, let's get that connected to ServiceNow. What does this step in ServiceNow entail? So for deploy application, we're going to say deploy and test. Now connecting it to the CMDB. What service are we going to be utilizing? And all of its corresponding CIs. And that's extremely powerful because a developer is not tracking CIs or network outages, but now we can. At this point, we're going to move forward. You can see the tool connections, any import requests, the plans that we're connected to, the repositories, the pipelines, and also a history of your tool connectivity. So this is very powerful for troubleshooting if necessary. We've already done discovery in our initial connection for the tool. Just know that that's there again. If you need to go back and pull in further historical data from your tools. So discovery allows you to do that. And also entering manual configuration mode. This is if you needed to create any changes in your credentials, but also if you wanted to disable this connection. So if you were to disconnect it, it would no longer continue pulling in data on a nightly basis. Let's talk more about connecting tools. Just really quickly want to state there is always a little bit of nuance inside each and every one of these wizards. So when you're selecting them, go back to docs.servicenow.com if you need any help beforehand to proactively collect the data you need for each one of these individual tools. While you're going through the wizard here, we do walk you through those steps, but it's always a good idea to make sure you look through the documentation first, just to be better prepared and have any additional information that one of these tools might require. For the most part, they're all very similar, but again, there are additional steps needed in some of the tools. Now that we've gone over the platform setup and connecting your tools, we're going to create applications. Applications are a container of sorts that bring together your coding tools to your pipeline tools to your orchestration tools to your planning tools and creates an application in ServiceNow to make sure all of the data is connected properly. Let's see how these applications work. Now that you have at least one tool connected, you can create an application. Go ahead and enter an application name at this point. As a reminder, an application is simply a collection of one or multiple CI/CD tools and the data that they're bringing in. And we want to combine them underneath the application. So you will need to select Business App, and at this point, follow one or more recommended navigation points. So associating pipeline also shows up underneath the pipeline tab along the top. Associating plan, same thing. You can click on the recommended action or simply go to the plans tab and associate that plan. If you need to connect an additional tool, you can do so at this point. Let's say your planning is actually happening in Jira. So if that connection is not already made, you would need to connect it at this time. Let's go ahead and associate the proper plan. The scenario we're working with is ADO is the planning tool. So at this point, we're going to pull in the plan. In this case, it's Parts Unlimited YAML. And we will go back to the beginning of the project. So this has been back to August is when that planning started. And we will pull in the historical information. Of course, the information will continue to get populated going forward from that point. Now we're going to pick the pipeline. So associating the pipeline is going to allow us to select which particular pipeline needs to be connected to this app. It is the Parts Unlimited, and that is actually also the release. So I'm going to bring in both. Yep. I'm going to go back and pull in at least from August. And we can see the pipelines are now showing. And let's pick the repositories that we want connected to this application. At this point, we have one repository, and that is in fact Parts Unlimited. Same thing, pulling back enough information so that we can have insights and go forward. Let's go ahead and import that data. Connecting a tool talked about that really briefly. Let's say you were doing your coding in another application, in another CI/CD tool. If you don't have it already connected, you could connect it at this point here, and it would walk you through the wizard. In this case here, it would be for GitHub. Now, look at automatic change creation. So this is the point where ServiceNow creates a change request. Where in the pipeline do you want ServiceNow to do that? So we will pick our main pipeline, and this is showing us the 4 steps that pipeline has. So this is coming from ADO. Right now, the change control is false. We're not making a change request for any of these steps, but we want to change that. So on deploy, we're going to enable this to be the step that creates the change process. So it is a deploy, and that will show up in the change request. The service, so connecting to your CMDB, what CIs, what servers, what databases all come along with this, and that information is stored within ServiceNow. So picking the service of fulfillment will allow us to combine that data. Here's where we're given a script. This step is specific to ADO. We'll need to copy this script and put it into our pipeline configuration file. So we can copy it, and at that point, we're even able to change it and add more tasks, more fields, more values if we like. So we've created our first application. For our last step, we're just going to go over a few other things about the workspace that might be of interest to you, and we're also going to show how Insights can immediately begin reporting on your development performance and your change management performance. A few more things to quickly point out about the Change Workspace. The navigation over here does give you the link for some policy guidance for your change approval. And this is going into the conditions and criteria that you might want to put into your flow. Most of the time, there's 3 outcomes. Either the change request is going to be automatically approved, automatically rejected, or sent into a manual change review process of some sort because there wasn't enough information for ServiceNow to make that decision. We do give you the link here for the default DevOps change request flow. So let's take a look at that. We're not going to go into all of the different variables and lookups that it's doing, but you can just briefly see here we've got things like assignment groups. We're definitely looking up the change request record. We're receiving information from your CI/CD toolchain. We're updating the change request, setting things like the window where that change needs to go through. So this is an extremely comprehensive workflow process. We definitely recommend you check out all that it's doing. Again, this is the DevOps default change request flow. Back to the workspace, we want to talk about automatic change creation. We've seen this already in a previous step that we were doing in our configuration, but it's worth noting that you can come back here and make further changes. So we'll go ahead and select a pipeline, and then here you're going to select your step. So the reason for coming back here would be if you wanted to change the ServiceNow change request creation at a different point. So if something changed inside ADO, if you added another step to your pipeline, you would be able to modify this step here and tell ADO when to signal ServiceNow to create that change request. For further navigation, along the left-hand side of the DevOps Change Workspace, you can see all of the applications you've created. Next will be tools, and so from here directly, you could connect your planning tools, coding tools, orchestration tools, so on and so forth. And finally, let's look at Insights. Insights is the reporting functionality of the DevOps solution. As soon as all of your tool connections have been made and you've imported some historical data, Insights allows you to view your performance right away. I'm going to go ahead and filter one particular application. From here, I can see such information as my deployment frequency, the work items that have been completed. I can also filter down further by a specific repository, by a specific service inside ServiceNow and connected to the CMDB. I can even drill down into the specific configuration items connected to these services. What you see here is an overview of what we call the DORA metrics. DORA was originally created by Google Cloud to track the performance of their development team and how the development team was working with IT. You see information here such as our volume, automated versus manual changes. Are there any changes awaiting approval? And then performance on the development itself. How frequently are we committing? How many active committers are there? Other information such as the commits without work items. It's best practice in the DORA metrics to have commits with work items. So making sure that you're not creating any unplanned code commits. So again, Insights is live and operational just as soon as you get your tools connected. Last but not least, the Administration tab of the DevOps Change Workspace allows you to see the system health dashboard. So how many events are you processing? Which tools are they coming in from? In this case here, I just have one orchestration tool connected right now, but that would certainly grow. The tool connectivity, giving you a history of any connects or disconnects. Troubleshooting, including error logs, your inbound events, and how they're processing, where they're coming from. All of your payloads, your pipeline change requests, and any registered callbacks. The system configuration does have some properties for you to review. And of course, your user group roles, your tasks for users and groups as well. So this is the Administration tab of the DevOps Change Workspace. We hope this overview of ServiceNow's DevOps Change Velocity has been useful. We certainly want all of our ITSM Pro customers to begin adopting this technology. And if you have any issues in connecting to your tools, please open a support ticket and we can help you with any of those unexpected challenges. If you want to watch an end-to-end solution, we also have the adoption video in this website. Please watch the adoption video. That will show you a fully configured solution operating from end to end. Thank you.